All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Winner Circle Sports Betting Podcast. It's live on a football Friday. And as always, we are powered by gamblersworld.net. It is the 23rd of August, the final preseason weekend, week 0 college football. And listen, we got a first-time guest with us here who's on the site. Before I get to Marc and Victor, we have NFL. Early bird is up $5.99. Get on board. Me, Victor, Marc, 10 other top handicappers over at Gamblers World. Get all of the plays through the Super Bowl, just $5.99. If you do that today or next week or the week after, I think that comes out to like $30 a week, even less. You can't beat it. Money management is key. People will tell you that. You hear that all the time in sports betting. It really does matter. And we have Major League Baseball. Although it is winding down, not technically, we've got about a month plus playoffs left, but $2.99 if you want some MLB action. Winners on the bases. And last but not least, you know what I tell you, hit the like and subscribe button here on the Winner Circle YouTube channel. I always say I want to get to 15,000 by December, but who knows? Maybe we can get it by the end of September. I don't get too greedy with my likes, although I do get greedy with my run line money plays. Instead of laying a 130, I'm not going to get greedy with our like buttons. Now, speaking of like buttons, we have a new guy to come in and hit like buttons with, Mr. Marc Lawrence, playbook legend. I was talking about there. I said, I do videos or I meet somebody. It's like, wow, it always seems like I take it as like it's pretty cool, meaning someone you've read about or seen on TV or listened to on a radio show, stuff like that. So I talked to about 4 minutes off the air. I don't even know what Marc expects he's going to be into a wild night with me. I'm definitely probably a little different hoster than he's been used to with Victor, but welcome to the site. I'm happy to have you. I mean, you bring a lot of insight, a lot of experience, a lot of depth. I love it. I'm sure the viewers are going to enjoy you. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy being part of the team here at Gamblers World, along with Victor and a host of other great handicappers on the site. And I'm really looking forward to Fridays, live Fridays, where we can share a lot of really good winning information to anybody. And as you mentioned, if anybody has any questions, all you need to do is send them in, and we'll go over that chat, and we'll give you our answers live here as well. So I think this is going to be one heck of a must-watch show every Friday.
As I retweet us out here, listen, people love Football Fridays. I know it's kind of like a ho-hum kind of weekend. It's week 3 preseason. Who's playing? Who's not playing? Is it going to be worth any value? Week 0, we have a decent matchup in the ACC tomorrow, but then we have a crazy Hawaii Lane 40. I'm sure that a lot of degenerates are going to want that bailout play. And who knows if we're going to talk about that one. But Victor, good to see you as well. Week 2 with me and Victor here. So I'm excited about that. I think we're going to have a nice football season, and we're going to keep the winners coming. We got 3 football NFL games we'll talk about today. Maybe if the comments bring in some baseball, we'll talk about that. We'll see how that goes. Otherwise, football, we'll hit our games. We'll maybe generally talk about other games this weekend and keep the winners going. 5-1 this week. Me and Doug, 5-1 combined record. Not too bad in the videos. Football, though, we're going to start it off. I'm going to go down to Victor's game here. We got Miami and Tampa. Tampa was in play last week with us here in the matchup. So this game opened up as Miami 1.5. They said maybe we won't play a bunch of starters. Now it's Miami as an underdog. Totals up to 37.5. Again, this was a 34.5, 35 on opener. We've seen that last week was all about unders. 26-6 to these unders last week or whatever they have been. And we got 2 overs last night. The Bears by themselves say we'll take your 32 and go over it ourselves. Do we expect more scoring this weekend in some of these matchups than last week? And particularly your game, side, total, Miami, Tampa. Take it away, Mr. King.
Sean, you hit on some of the main topics, which are the fact that last week was another very, very low-scoring week in NFL preseason action. Week 2, 14 out of 16 games under the total. That's 2 overs, 14 unders. Average score was only 29.5 combined points last week. The average game went under by almost a full touchdown, by minus 6.7 points per game. Also, thus far in the preseason, I do some of the stats for our playbook database, and Marc is always interested in knowing how the faves and the dogs are doing. And week 2 was kind of like a mirror of week 1 as far as faves and dogs. 10-5-1 ATS last week for all underdogs in the NFL. 20-11-1 on the season, 64% through the first 2 weeks of the NFL preseason. But as Sean just mentioned, it's important, again, not to just knee jerk off of what just happened last weekend. Because if you did that, then you probably may have bet the underdogs last night and the unders, and you would have went 0-4. The favorites went 2-0 ATS. And as Sean mentioned, both games ended up going over the total. And very easily, I might add, although I'll tell you this, we had a play on the Cincinnati Colts game under the total, and I thought we were in fantastic shape in that game. It was 10-7 at the half. It was even 10-7 heading into the fourth quarter. But lo and behold, we had one of those weird preseason games in which 24 points were scored in the final quarter, including a come from ahead 40-yard touchdown by the Colts inside the 2-minute warning to award Colt backers with the big-time double-digit win, not to mention over the total bettors got the win as well. We were on the right side. I understand it. Things like that happen in the preseason. But it is a little bit of a difficult taste in your mouth for those of us who were on the Colts-Bengals game under the total last night.
Hey, Victor, let me ask you a question real quick, if I can jump in here, if
Sure.
I may. You bring up a great point about how low-scoring the games have been, and then suddenly, boom, crash, bam, we find the opposite result happening. And we know that the odds makers will adjust on something that's obviously happening. Do you feel that was the case last night, and do you feel it could possibly be the case this weekend?
Absolutely, that has been the case. If you look at the lines, there's only one game this entire weekend in the NFL in which the over-under line is 38 or more points. It just happens to be the game that we will be talking about, tonight's game, the Battle of the Sunshine State between the Buccaneers and our boys from down here in South Florida, the Miami Dolphins. And as long as we have intro to that game, we may as well get into it. Again, the unders have been basically cash cows. So there's no way that we're going to be going over the total on the highest total of the week, right? Wrong. Not so fast. I'm kind of with the sharps on this one. And when I say sharps, if you take a look at some of the action in this particular game, yes, I'm seeing a lot of overall tickets. Yes, a lot of overall bets on the under. But with that said, there's anywhere from 80 to 85% of all cash, the larger wagers, the whale money coming in on the over in this particular game. It doesn't have the same feel as some of the dreaded matchups that we may be unblessed with this week. Instead, we are trending into first teamers getting some run with the ones, the first teamers. This is what we want to see in the preseason when we're betting over. And for the Bucs, of course, head coach Todd Bowles has told reporters earlier this week he's eager to see what his new offensive coordinator can do with Baker Mayfield and the first team down in northern Florida this evening. Of course, head coach Mike McDaniel of our Dolphins, he's leaning toward letting his first stringers take the field, particularly for the entire first quarter. We should not see some of that, stomach churning type quarterback play from soon-to-be practice squad players that typically plague preseason finales.
What you're saying, Victor, is we might see a real game here tonight.
Well, there's also a fierce battle to back up Tua Tagovailoa between Skylar Thompson and Mike White of the Dolphins, which has me at least a little bit more bullish on Miami putting a somewhat competitive offense on the field for a full 60 minutes. I did get this tweet a little bit earlier. Similar to what the Rams did last week, I'm seeing that Dolphins assistant head coach, tight end coach, John Embry will handle head coaching duties in the second half of tonight's game versus the Bucs. With that said, however, Mike McDaniel will still call plays for the offense for the full 60 minutes. I like hearing that. I've got a couple of things out of the database here, guys. Let me run through them here. A high-scoring series. These two teams play each other a lot. 3 out of the last 4 meetings over the total. Average line 36.4. Average score 42.3. The average game goes over the total by 5.9 points. Tampa Bay's splits. Miami splits. We're talking home-road dichotomy in terms of totals. Tampa Bay, we don't go back very far for the Bucs, but it is very interesting to note that their last 4 preseason home games have all gone over the total. 44.3 is your average. Their last 4 preseason road games have gone under the total, only 25.7. So Buccaneer home games, a lot more points, particularly in the last 3 years. And as far as the Dolphins go, their splits, this is something that I wrote about in our preseason playbook newsletter a couple of weeks ago, the fact that Miami, one of the better home under teams, but a very good road over team, and they are taken to the road this evening. So Dolphins 7-20-1 at home last 15 years, 7 overs, 20 unders. But their last 16 preseason road games, 11-5 to the over, 42.9 points per game. The clincher for me, guys, is you got the fact that, yeah, Miami's off that, 13-6 win over Washington last week, while Tampa kind of shit the bed a little bit. They only scored, 6-7 points. They let us down against the Jacksonville Jaguars. With that said, this has now gone 9-1-1 over the last 15 years. You got any NFL team who scored 7 or less the previous week against a team who allowed 7 or less the previous week. That applies to the Buccaneers. I know it's the highest over-under line, but it looks like there's some sharp money. So that's what we'll be watching tonight, rooting for tonight. Dolphins, Bucks over the total in their preseason finale.
Let me hop in here, if I may, real quick again, Sean, before you do. And Victor brings up a great point about the different play calling in the second half of the Miami Dolphins. And it's a slant that I took in our preseason preview guide magazine, and it's one I noticed last year, and it's a trend that's really rapidly developing, and it has to change if Miami wants to be successful this football season. And all you need to do is break down the box scores of the Miami Dolphins and what happened to this football team last year, and you'll see where Mike McDaniel failed to make halftime adjustments almost every football game. They were completely outscored in the second half of games, and it's because McDaniel didn't make the changes. He didn't adapt. The other teams do. The X's and the O's. McDaniel fell asleep at the switch. I'm just wondering, Victor, if you mentioned here calling plays in the second half is maybe a little bit of a concept thought that perhaps McDaniel might be entertaining this year?
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like that that is the next logical step for the Dolphins, is to really, really improve what they do as far as a team at halftime. And again, as I mentioned, he will be calling the offensive plays today in the first half and the entire second half as well, as we see who really wants that second quarterback job between Skylar Thompson and Mike White.
I was going to ask you, Mark, like your feelings on his total play, or like something else. But I'm going to actually just go a little off the key here and be like, I'm thinking this year, with you guys being South Florida guys, I'm going to be getting a lot of Miami insight from what is going on in Miami. So I think going forward, we're going to have a lot of Miami action here on a Friday show with some insider knowledge of reporter tidbits and stuff like that. We should be looking forward to.
Well, you're probably, Sean, also going to get some sidebar Cleveland information, because that's where Victor and I hail from.
Right.
And our roots are really deeply entangled with the Browns. So whether it be Miami, whether it be Cleveland, we'll be privy to a lot of what's going on with those two football programs.
Not to mention a little bit of allegiance toward Ohio State games as well, right? We're lifelong Buckeyes, yeah.
Run in our blood, yes.
Over 37 and a half, over 37 and a half official Football Friday play for Victor here. Now, you guys just mentioned the Browns, so I'm going to talk about, I know we don't have the Brown games today. And I kind of like the Browns. I think they I do like the coach. I think the team's overall pretty good. Quarterback situation, I guess a little worrisome out of it, but you have enough backups there who've won some games. I think they win week 1. I think they beat Dallas. I think Are they better than the Ravens? I don't think so. I think the Ravens are probably the best of the division there. And, Burrow and the Bengals, if it's a healthy Burrow, there could be a Super Bowl team. If he's a banged up Burrow, they're in trouble. But I think Cleveland's a playoff team. I think they could, I know Chubb's hurt coming back, but they played well with Ford. I know they're supposed to be interchangeable running backs in today's NFL, and they're not good anymore, right? It's a throwing league. But you got a defense, you got decent running backs. I like the receiving core. The quarterback situation is like average or below, but I don't know. Playoffs or yes or no, you guys? What do you know? Give me your Cleveland thoughts. I think they're a playoff team.
I think they're a legitimate playoff team this year, Sean. You break this football team down, and you mentioned the defense, ranked number 1 overall in the National Football League last year. That will take care of itself. The defense will. I know they lost Callahan, their defensive coordinator, but this team is really, really talented on the defensive side of the football. Then you look at the offense, and you're going to bring back to this team this year what they didn't have last year when they made that nice run to the playoffs. And that's going to be Nick Chubb, who arguably is the best running back in the National Football League. He can take over and dominate a football game at times, and he's really, really that talented. So you put Chubb into the mix there. They bring in Jerry Jeudy, a wide receiver, into the mix here from Denver to go with Amari Cooper. That's a real strong 1-2 punch. All you need here, Sean, is for Deshaun Watson to finally step up and deliver the goods. That's a big, big question mark and a big, big concern. And I wrote about this morning in my daily Coffee Club e-letter that Deshaun Watson was sidelined this week with soreness in his arm. He's got arm soreness all of a sudden. So now we're talking about the possibility of Deshaun Watson not being 100% again. But, if they can iron that out with Deshaun Watson, or even have to turn to Jameis Winston, who, when he was drafted, he put up numbers like only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL had put up better numbers than he did, than Winston did. So it's a much, much better backup plan here for Cleveland at the quarterback position here. And bottom line to me is this. Toughest division in the National Football League, the AFC North, bar none. So you have 3 legitimate teams here that are priced to make it to the playoffs or even go as far as the Super Bowl. Baltimore and Cincinnati are co-favorites right now. Then Cleveland's the third choice. Baltimore and Cincinnati are like plus 950. The Browns are plus 140. You can get them 140 to 1 to win the Super Bowl this year. That's absolutely stealing value for a football team that was in the playoffs last year, and I think it'd be better this year.
Victor, you want to add anything to that? Or?
Yeah, if I can, we've done a couple of podcasts already in which we've disagreed slightly. I still don't know what we've got in this Cleveland Browns team. Mark just mentioned Jameis Winston. In my opinion, he could be the better of the 2 quarterbacks. I know in my numerous fantasy football leagues, I've bailed on Deshaun Watson and traded him away in all my leagues. I want no part of him. I'll say this, Cleveland was plus 34 last year in point total differential, offensive points scored versus defensive points allowed, plus 34. It's probably more indicative of maybe a 9-8 or a 10-7 team rather than their 11-6 record. If they are going to improve in this division, they're going to have to improve in division play as well. They think they went 3-3 straight up in division play last year. In fact, I believe the only team that had a plus 500 record in division play was the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they went 5-1. So I still don't know what we got in the Browns, but they're going to have to improve in their overall division play this year to see what we got in what Mark just said was the toughest division of the NFL.
Yeah, I think it is the toughest division. Not even close. There's no other team I don't think that has 3 teams could be Super Bowl contenders. 2 really strong ones, and then you got Cleveland because they're Chubb's health and quarterback play. But who else has 3? I don't think a team has them. Maybe if you want to maybe look at the Jets, Buffalo, and Miami, but I still think you got some problems with those 3 that are bigger than what you have out of the North.
With the Jets? Did you say the Jets, Sean?
I did say the Jets.
Okay. I just want to make sure I heard that right. Okay.
I did say the Jets. Super Bowl possible. I'll be talking about the Jets-Giants battle of New Jersey teams in a second.
All right.
But, listen, early bird special up $5.99 since we're talking Super Bowl futures and stuff like that. And maybe going forward, we still have a couple, we'll have 2 Fridays before the season start. Actually, one Friday, and then we get that Thursday night game. But maybe we'll do a little future show. We can throw out some futures if we like anything with these gentlemen here who seem to know a little bit about football. So over the 37, we do got a couple comments in here. So let's go to Noop real fast. He says, curious what you guys think about the apparent trend towards the unders in games where teams have had these joint practices. I mean, I'll let the other guys talk in a second. Me on this one, I think that makes sense because the closed practices are what they are. It's not really a lot of media. It's them kind of playing real type football. And then when it comes to the game, what are we going to do? It's kind of not a glorified walkthrough, but they've already played tough. And then it's kind of coming in the real game. The under doesn't surprise me. Victor, you'll start this one.
I would think that is the case, and the information is out there. If you find it, use it to your advantage. But with that said, again, in last night's action, Cincinnati and the Colts, they've been practicing against each other all week long. You saw what happened in that game. Same thing with the Bears and Chiefs last night. So don't use that as your be-all, end-all, because there's always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Mark?
Well, I kind of equate it this way, Sean, when these teams practice against one another and then they play a preseason game. It's a little bit like, go back to your high school days when you were going to a prom and you went to the prom 2 times in 2 weeks, your prom and your date's prom. And you were really excited about going the first time, but the next week rolls around. Are you as excited that next week as you were for the first week? I don't think so. And I think you're going to see the same thing with these two teams playing each other after practice against one another here. I think they become very conservative type football plays. And I do agree with Victor. I think they do tend to go under the total.
One prom's enough. I don't like getting dressed up. This is Santa. When Jim was like, hey, Ross was like, you got to put on collared shirts. I'm like, collared shirts? I had to go buy, I had like 2 of them. I had to buy like 3 more to get a week's worth of collared shirts. This is fancy. I said, definitely I'm not doing 2 proms. That's not happening. I don't even the dry cleaner will get it back to my suit in time for me for that.
I'm mentioning it only because I did that, Sean. My wife and I, she's my high school sweetheart, and we've been married for 56 years. We went to each other's prom 2 times in 2 weeks. So that's the only reason I brought that up, because it's something that I experienced.
Well, see, now I'm going to make an age joke, because back in the day, the boys and girls couldn't go to the same high schools. They were separate. So you had 2 different proms.
There you go.
We're going to stick with you, Mark. You got San Fran and Vegas. Are you kidding me? A 9 in preseason. What is that? This was a 3. It is a 9. A total. You got to love this when we get spreads up to almost double digits and a total of 32.5. This is like an Iowa football game here with them laying 17 and a total of 31 with the offense. A 9 and a 32. Listen, I see this and I just shake my head. Like, hopefully people got in at like a 3 spot if you like San Fran. This is your game, Mark.
What did you say the total in the game is, Sean?
32.5.
Right.
Okay, that's exactly a golden rule when it comes to handicapping games with low totals and high spread.
Yes.
Golden. You play the dog and you play the over. If, my goodness, if all the dog has to do in a game like this is what, Victor, score 8 points?
Right.
Yes. And then you're going to guarantee not getting taken out twice in the same bet, and you have a good possibility of winning them both.
Yep.
But what really amazes me in this game here is the fact that this game has swung 12.5 points from the opening line. It opened up Vegas 3.5, and now it's sitting at San Francisco minus 12.5. Are you kidding me? I realize that Antonio Pierce has said that no starters are going to play for his football team this week. He wants to look at everybody. That's as deep as he wants to go. And you're looking at the other side of the coin where Kyle Shanahan did say he's going to play starters probably the first quarter of this game. So hence the big, wild, strong move here. I don't believe it. I don't think so. None whatsoever at all. Victor mentioned here about these great numbers for big dogs in preseason football games. Home dogs of 7 or more, they're 8-1 to the spread the last 9 times they've dressed up in that particular role. And you've also got from our database here, our what I call our well-oiled machine, you're talking about all-time dogs of 7 or more. How about 82-54 to the spread? 2-0 straight up and against the spread this year. 2 7-point dogs both won the football game straight up here. Kyle Shanahan, I know he's going to want to win the football game because he wants to set the table here, but is he going to punch this football team out? And also, you have a Raiders football team that's awfully hungry right now. They're winless. They want to get their act back together here again. I'm not going to be surprised if the Raiders win this football game, so I'm certainly going to take the points.
Vegas +9 from Marc Lawrence Victor. Anything to add to that one?
Mark mentioned the database there. I even upped the ante a little bit, and I went to look at underdogs of 8 or more in preseason play. 27-10 ATS dating all the way back to 1992. A perfect 9-0 since 2000. So we're talking 22 seasons, underdogs of 8 or more, a perfect 9-0. And that applies to the Raiders this evening.
Victor, how long do you think Raider backup quarterback Aiden O'Connell is going to play in this game here? He was in the fierce job here with Minshew, and they awarded the starting job to Minshew, who will be sitting this game. So now the playing time is going to go to O'Connell. And what more do you want in the last game of a preseason than a backup quarterback who's been a former quarterback who wants to get his rhythm and his act in gear here? I think this is a steal of a play.
I don't know if he's going to be getting any run whatsoever. I don't believe he's even starting the game this evening. Again, we don't know.
Carter Bradley's time. The headline is Carter Bradley's time to shine.
Right.
To the Raiders.
That's the big reason for the line move.
Yes.
No O'Connell, no Minshew. We'll see what that's the big reason for that line move. But again, you can't ignore value. Remember, at times, Marco mentioned holding your nose when you make your play. This is one of those particular games. We don't necessarily bet on teams. We bet on numbers. We bet on perceived value in the line.
That's one of my theories, a long running theory of mine, guys, is in handicapping the National Football League, even college football, but more of a degree in the National Football League, is when you're setting the card up each and every week, you have to put tape over the names of the teams. Forget who they are. They're not the the ugly New England Patriots, or they're not the lousy Las Vegas Raiders. When the football season begins, they've got numbers that they bring to the table, and you simply put tape over the names of those teams and then put them side by side in a tail of the tape and see how they line up. So this is another game where this would be a tape job, what I call putting tape over the name of the Raiders, but it works very, very well throughout the course of the season in the National Football League.
I guess tape's a little better than saying your team stinks so bad, but you got to hold our nose. So I guess it's a little nicer way to back bad teams. But I agree. Like, it's the number. I know people are like, well, it doesn't make a difference what the number is. If a win's a win. I disagree with that. I think in the long run, when you play it out over a football season, a basketball season, the better number, you're going to win more than you're going to lose on that. It's going to help your bottom line.
Hey, Sean, if I may, I'm going to share some numbers here for the week 3 of the preseason here before you get to your play, if I may.
Go ahead.
And again, my approach in handicapping the preseason is largely centered around head coaches, because there's a distinct advantage and disadvantage of the head coaches. Some come to play to win every game they're on the field, and some could care less. All they want to do is evaluate the players. If you take a look at the 5 coaches we outlined in our playbook newsletter here, of every coach's record in his career in the preseason here, the top 5 coaches combined, they would be Jim and John Harbaugh both, Sean McDermott, Matt Eberflus, and Robert Saleh from the New York Jets. Their records combined in the preseason coming into this year were 79-31 straight up and 74-34 to the spread. Now, so far this football season here, they've only gone 6-4 and 5-4-1 to the spread. But I'm going to say this: the 5 wins were all dogs, and the 5 dogs won all their games straight up for these play-on Fab 5 coaches when it comes to preseason football time. So keep that in mind. And on the flip side, you've got the coaches that don't care or could care less about winning and making that a priority in the preseason. Our 5 worst coaches by record: Dennis Allen from New Orleans, Dan Campbell from Detroit, Kevin O'Connell from Minnesota, Dan Quinn now with Washington, and Nick Sirianni. These coaches in their careers were just 10-34 straight up and 11-28 to the spread. So far this year, they're 6-4 straight up and 5-5 to the spread. So that's the first thing I look at when I'm looking at preseason football, are the head coaches and whether they care or they don't.
Yeah, always good, because some care, some don't. I like, when I look at the coaches, I kind of look at the guys taking over like a new team. Like, they got to kind of get that loser mentality out of their mouths and have to come out and, rah-rah themselves to wins. But historically, listen, to Harbaugh, that was just an incredible run that he put together before this season. Unbelievable. Revit. So I'll be doing Jets Giants, but let me just grab a couple comments. Poundit was impressed with the database going back 15 years. The truth, I love Georgia Tech at 13.5. Now it's 10.5. I'm hesitant. I got him at a 13.5. 10.5, I'm not loving. I want the best numbers. I don't know about you guys. If a game moves like this, are you still going to be interested in? Probably not. I mean, I'm using my head the way you guys are, and in this business doing this. If the lines move 3 points, they're probably going to stay away from it.
Well, it's all about value first and foremost when it comes to wagering. And if you have value and you say to yourself, man, I could have taken 13.5. Now it's 10.5. How much of that do I want? Probably not much. It's like buying a car. You could have bought the car when there's a special on it. Now it's $2,000 higher and you're going to go back and buy the car. I don't think you're going to sleep real well at night. And that's the same case here. When a game moves 3 or more points for a side that you did like, suddenly I have no interest in the game.
You don't have to play. If the line is gone, it's okay to move on.
There'll be another game to come around down the road. Yes.
Yeah. You got Hawaii minus 40. That line only moved 2 points, so it's a little better for you. Oh, thoughts on the Giants? I think we're gonna have a horrible season. Mar, good to see you. Mar is a good contributor to the show, and we're gonna go right into this game because this is my puppy I picked out here: the Giants and the Jets. Battle of New Jersey. Heath Rutherford's finest at the Snoopy Dome here, and I'm not gonna really dig into a lot of stuff. Now I feel I like the Giants to win minus 145. You want to lay at 2.5. But that, Mark just brought up the fact that Salah's a winner here in preseason. Is it in the back of my head? Yes, but the Giants, I don't think they're going to be good this season, which is why I like them here, because this is a game where they can be like, hey, we beat our in-state rivals. I mean, what do they have? This is a bad team. I think Dabo might be on the way out after a bad season here. You paid Daniel Jones. It's not on a head coach to pay him because this is just going right for these quarterbacks. But that's a whole nother show. We could talk about that and quarterbacks. I love to just rant about bad quarterbacks and them getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. But this is going to be a bad team. And the Jets, let's be honest, we're not going to see Aaron Rodgers. Nick Martinez might play or Pressey or whatever the other kid's name is over there. To me, it's the Giants. Not that this is their season because it's game 3 of the preseason, but they need a little something to get the fans pumped up about here. And nothing better than being a team like the Jets, who I think is going to be a playoff team, maybe a little better than that. They're built to win now. They're not built to be playing a ridiculous game 3 exhibition when they have the Niners on deck in 10 days or 14 days, whenever. They got bigger fish to fry. Giants here, a nice feel-good win for their team heading into a porous regular season. You want to go under Giants? I'd go take the under Giants. The Giants are not going to be good, Mar. That is my thoughts on your New Jersey, East Rutherford Giants. Victor.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think the Giants are going anywhere this year. And, the biggest reason is Daniel Jones, all the money they've committed to him. And at best, he's a mediocre quarterback. He's shown flashes and signs of potential, but he's never delivered the goods. And they're starting the season off with him again this year. Nothing's changed. Saquon Barkley's gone. Jones is still the quarterback here. I don't know what there's a lot to like about the Giants this football season here. I think they're going to really, really struggle, and I think they're going to really bring up the bottom of the barrel in the NFC East by the end of the year.
Agreed.
Right, last place. I think we're all in agreement as far as that goes. These two teams, they do play each other almost every season in the preseason, Jets, Giants. 7 out of the last 10 meetings have indeed gone over the total. A little bit surprising. Even more important, 47.8 is the average combined points per game when these two teams play each other. For the longest time, this was a big-time under series. We're talking back in the early 2000s and then the early 2010s. But 7 out of the last 10 meetings over the total, 47.8. With that said, I'm still not touching it. As you guys know, Aaron Rodgers will not play a lick in the preseason. But again, it is worthy of note that it's been a fairly high-scoring series in this Battle of New York.
Victor, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers not playing. That's no surprise at all. I mean, you go back and even before his Achilles heel, he didn't play anyway when he was healthy in the preseason. And I also remember Aaron Rodgers. I mean, when he was traded, before he was traded, to the New York Jets. If you go back and you look at his record before that, he was really, really looking in the rearview mirror with his production and what he did. So maybe the Achilles heel might bring a fresh set of wheels for him and a new outlook. We'll see just that. But when it comes to the preseason here, we're talking about coaches. You also have to look at these backup quarterbacks. And Victor put together for us in our preseason newsletter a nice job of the quarterback rotations that are in effect. And I think week 3 of the preseason this week, it doesn't come into play any more importantly than it does this week. And if you take a look, I think there's 4 teams out there that have backup quarterbacks in rotations I think that the teams can benefit from. First of all, Pittsburgh jumps right off the page with Fields and Wilson in that spot to earn the starting job. My goodness, if they split the duties, one of them's going to play one half and the other's going to play the second half, you're going to get a whole lot of a real field deal to Pittsburgh this weekend. Victor also mentioned the Miami Dolphins here. Skylar Thompson and Mike White, they're battling for the second spot on this roster here as well. They're going to see a lot of time this weekend. You've got the New England Patriots. You've got 3 quarterbacks. I don't even know if they know what they're doing there. Have they named a starting quarterback there yet, Victor?
New England?
Yes.
No, they haven't. I believe that the New England and Pittsburgh jobs are still the 2 where they have undecided on the quarterback.
So now we're talking Drake May, Jacoby Brissett, and Bailey Zappi. So you're going to get.
They're talking. I saw something where
Joe
Drake
Milton
May might surprise it. They might hand it to Drake May right out of the gate up there.
Wow. There's reports I read early on. He didn't look good, and then I've read reports where he has looked good. So it's sort of what his career was all about in college football. In fact, I'll tell you a little sidebar note story here. Last year, we had Tyreek Hill on the cover of our Playbook Preview Guide magazine, and our editor who puts our magazine together did a fantastic job making that cover up. It's one of the nicest I've ever seen in my life. Well, we were considering putting Drake May on the cover. And the reason we ditched it at the last minute is because Drake May was negotiating with other schools. And if we would have put Drake May as a North Carolina quarterback on the cover and he's quarterbacking for Oregon or some other program, it would have made us look like hideously like we didn't know what we were doing. So, and one other team here, guys, I think you have to take a look at. And I know the job is going to be Geno Smith's, but I think Sam Howell is going to push him right down to the max here. If you take a look, Sam Howell was one of these quarterbacks in the NFL last year. There were only 8 of them. 8 teams that their quarterback played in every football game, their starting quarterback. Sam Howell was one of those 8 quarterbacks with Washington last year. Didn't play real well, but he did start all 8 football games. He was one of those 8 quarterbacks that started every football game. So I would entertain the thought also of Seattle in a backup quarterback rotation deal with Howell and Geno Smith this week.
Let me say Sam Howell. I always bring him up because people talk about like, oh, Caleb Williams is like the best thing since sliced bread. He's going to be like C.J. Stroud. And I talk about quarterbacks who just, you're drafted by a team that's drafted first, second, or in the top 5. You're a bad team going in bad situation. Sam Howell's the guy. He's a guy who was supposed to be coming out of what, Carolina? He was supposed to be the top draft. He was the number 1 pick coming into that season.
Yep.
Bad season. He goes to Washington, doesn't get to play. He sort of plays. Now at 22 or whatever he is, he's like fighting for a role. How many times do we see this? Mac Jones, the guy had 3 different coordinators in New England, won a special teams coach. Like, oh, he's a bust. How do you know what that guy was? Because he had a guy who teaches people how to punt running his offense. And
Sean, it was the same thing for Sam Howell at North Carolina. He had 3 different offensive coordinators there.
Yeah. Yep. Every year. And then one year, everybody left and went to the NFL of his receiver. So, I mean, like.
By the final year, they made him a half-ass running back and a quarterback. So you kind of have to play with the cards you're dealt. Yes. But they felt there was enough talent there for him to at least warrant being a starting quarterback in the NFL.
It's like Drake May. Let's throw Drake May. You just drafted the guy at the top of the board here, and let's throw him behind a ridiculous line and a bad team for him to just get totally abused, and then a new coach comes in 2 years, and let him sit behind Brissett and learn a little bit. You're not going to be that good. You put him in after a bye week. Let him. Guys have to learn a little bit. I mean, how not everybody's C.J. Stroud and had a great. Let's see how he is the next year. Because I'm old enough to remember when Jalen Hurts was supposed to be the next big thing, and then he fell apart last year. So I'm all for letting the guy learn a little bit. Like, stay in school 4 years, guys. Learn. Sit behind us. It's okay. Your team will. I think the team would understand. No.
Look where it got Bo Nix. I mean, he's a very seasoned rookie quarterback. He's 24 years old. He made more starts than any quarterback in college football history. And what does he do? He wins the starting job as a rookie behind Sean Payton, no less. He didn't fool a rookie head coach. So you're right. You're dead on, Sean, about that experience with these kids that are coming out after their sophomore years, their junior years. They're really behind the eight ball as far as experience goes.
I would say, especially, I'll let you talk a second, Victor, but especially now with no money and guys are just jumping around. I think, that's quarterbacks can't jump around. Stay in a program where you're at least in the same system. Go ahead, Victor. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I was going to say that you guys bring up a very good point about the fact that people look at week 3 of the NFL preseason and they kind of yawn a little bit. No big deal. Games don't mean that much. Well, not only are a couple teams down to their quarterback one competition, we mentioned the Steelers, right? There's easily a handful of teams in which that number 2 job is up for grabs and will be determined by the outcome of this weekend's games. We talked about the Dolphin competition that goes on tonight between Skylar Thompson and Mike White. But you easily got a handful of other teams out there that are still a number 2 position up for grabs. Cooper Rush and Trey Lance in Dallas.
Yeah, Lance has worked himself into the mix, hasn't he, Victor?
Right, he's in the mix now with a decent game last week. The fact that I know Bo Nix has been named the starter in Denver, they still don't know who the number 2 guy is going to be. Probably going to be Stidham, but Wilson is still in the mix. Detroit, Hendon Hooker has not looked very good. They've got a battle between him and Nate Sudfeld to determine the number 2 spot in Detroit as well. One more, and there's easily another handful in there, but a team that has a big game this weekend is the New Orleans Saints, because right now that battle for the number 2 spot behind Carr between Jake Haener and, of course, the rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler, that is also going to be coming right down to the wire. So that game on Sunday against the Titans is also a very big game for the Saints to see who makes the roster and who might just be cut outright.
You mentioned Spencer Rattler, Victor, and I know he kind of maybe fizzled out at the end of his career, but there was a time when he was a Heisman Trophy. Was he correct? Yes. A favorite, maybe even?
Yes, for Oklahoma.
Yes. Right. Yep.
And I think you left out. I got to throw Jackson in there because I mentioned Mac Jones, but him and CJ Beathard. Beathard's been down there. He wants to be the number 2. He knows the system, right? I mean, that's another team I look to put up points, and they're 7-something point favorites here over Atlanta, who basically said, "Hey, Penix, we saw enough of Penix. We're not going to play him anymore. Let's just wrap him up." You got a 37-year-old quarterback, or however old Kirk Cousins is, off an ACL. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong for Atlanta this year? My guy blows out his leg again, and I got a quarterback who's taken 7 snaps in the preseason.
Well, that was obviously the jaw-dropping move in the National Football League draft when Atlanta went for Michael Penix after having just recently secured the services of Kirk Cousins, who, if Kirk Cousins is healthy, he's going to really, really propel this football team.
That guy is good. Nobody talks about him. He's thrown as many touchdowns as Mahomes. The guy throws 100 touchdowns the last 3 years.
He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, Sean. People say, Kirk Cousins. He is. Look at his numbers. They're Hall of Fame numbers.
Listen, everybody loves these. Everything's about the numbers. I see, to get off subject here about Joey Votto, people are like, the guy's a Hall of Famer. I'm like, is it the Hall of Fame or is the Hall of Statistics? I mean, Lance Berkman has the same numbers as that guy. Nobody even remotely thinks Lance Berkman's a Hall of Famer, but Joey Votto is because he's a nice guy. I can't get Jeff Kent in a Hall of Famer, best second baseman of his generation. Can't get a Hall of Fame sniff. Andrew Jones.
Well, maybe Joey Votto because he's playing today, and Berkman's,
well, that's the thing. Everybody, they bring out the numbers here, and it's guys get left in the dust. I don't know. That's another. We'll do another live show on me ranting on the nerd numbers of WAR and exit velocities and this kind of nonsense. Jason Hayward, borderline Hall of Famer, they say. Are you out of your minds, people? Are you out of your minds? Jason Hayward? I'll leave you speechless. That's the talk. Let's we gotta hit some comments here. Hit the like button if you're on the YouTubes, which I think people are because we do have comments. $5.99 early bird football's up. If you missed them already, I like the New York Giants money line over the Jets. Mark is on the Raiders plus the 9. Victor over Miami. into the comments we go. Will Rodgers play? We've said this. He doesn't. The guy never plays preseason. No way, Nevada. Not playing. Also loving the Texans this week. Who are they got? What do they got going on here, Houston? I don't even know who they're playing.
Texans and the Rams.
I'll take the. Were they laying a touchdown there? I don't know. It actually came down. It was 6 went down to 4. I know we had a group move on that game to buy that line, to move that line down. I still like the Texans. What are the Rams playing for here? And here's a team in Houston. We talk about backup quarterbacks. Davis Mills and Case Keenum are two guys that have won NFL game. So I don't care. It's come down, and maybe sharper people think the 6 was worth it. I don't know. I still can't get behind the Rams.
No, the Rams are a team that they don't score a lot of points in the preseason. Yeah. I believe they've scored less than 14 in each of their 2 games thus far. With that said, this is a system that I always run in the database where you look at teams who played in the Hall of Fame game, and they're playing a team that obviously didn't, like this particular game. Houston, it's their 4th game of the preseason, while for the Rams, it's their 3rd game, right? 4 against 3.
A 1-game advantage for these Hall of Famers for the last game is what you're saying, Victor.
In the last 3 years, any game 4 versus a game 3 have been actually pretty high scoring. 6 out of 7 of these games have gone over the total. Last night, it went over the total because the Bears played their 4th game of the season while the Chiefs played their 3rd. You saw what happened in that game. It went over the total by more than 3 touchdowns. So, again, if you're looking at totals, and I know Rams scare me betting it over in the preseason, that is for sure, but there are some good numbers in the database that suggest this game will be a little higher scoring than people think when the Texans take on the Rams.
Well, Victor, you mentioned the Bears and how good of a preseason they've had this year, and Matt Eberflus was on that Fab 5 list of coaches that does extremely well in the preseason here. Do you think that the incentive there was because Caleb Williams is now part of the team and he pushed on the pedal a little bit more? The Chicago Bears closed out real well to end the football season last year. Everybody forgets they thought they were a poor team, but they won. I believe it was like 5 of their last 7 or 4 of the last 6 games. Do you feel that Caleb Williams has been that spark for that football team in preseason?
Right, and you can tell Chicago really put their foot down on the gas pedal here in the preseason, but not just because of that, because they've added so many different players to their offense in addition to the rookie quarterback. They signed DeAndre Swift at the running back position. They got a new wide receiver in Odunze, who they wanted to get plenty of preseason reps in. Keenan Allen is a new wide receiver on that team as well. They've adjusted their tight end room. Yeah, they had Cole Kmet. They brought in Gerald Everett as well. He's been their star tight end in the preseason thus far. So it's also to acclimate some of those newer players on offense so that this team is ready to roll once they get into the regular season.
Well, then let me ask you this, Victor. It's my feeling from what it is that I do. I feel Detroit takes a step backwards this year, and I'll explain why. But if Detroit does take a step backwards in that NFC North division, does that open the door for the possibility of Chicago stealing the NFC North?
I don't know if they can win the division title. We'll say what Sean says about this particular thing. But it puts them in the playoff race, that's for sure. The only thing I know pretty much for sure about this NFC North division is that the Vikings are going to finish in last.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Just to follow up before I turn it back over to you, Sean, my theory or my thought on Detroit stepping back this year is really rather simple. It's all mathematics, and it's all called returning to the norm. And if you take a look at what Detroit did last year, they won more games last year than they did in their previous 2 years combined. And you find teams that do that in the National Football League. It's called regression to the mean. And it happens in a mean way for these football teams. Now, suddenly Detroit is picked by everybody to maybe even make or win the Super Bowl this year because he had such a great football season last year. But I think there's value in fading a team like that. So thus my reason for Detroit stepping back this year.
All right, real fast. We're going to say hi to Brian Bittlers chiming in, says he loves all of us. I know, Brian. Brian, if send me a message on Twitter. I got to talk to you. And Nola, since we're talking about the Bears and the Lions, any win totals you're high on? Well, I'm an under guy, and we're talking about the Bears. Under. I was on Sports Grid the other night, and the amount of hate, the Bears fans out of the woodwork thinking they're going to win 9, 10 games, we're going to win 12 games. I disagree. This Bears team, okay, Caleb Williams, he is not the best thing since Puff Rice. The schedule, I said 5 wins. Maybe they win 7. the second half of their schedule is ridiculous. And the Lions, I understand, like, take a step back. See, I think they're ready to take a step forward. I think they've struggled enough, and yet last year was a big step.
You think they can top last year's effort?
I think they're in the Super Bowl out of the NFC. Okay. I think the Niners' schedule there's too many bad spots for them, and they're going to get tripped up somewhere. It'll just be too bruising. They play they're just such a bruising team. It'll catch up with them. And I said this about Harbaugh before. The guy can't win a big game. He's blown Super Bowls. He's blown NFC title games. And he's blowing 10-point leads. It's not like, it's some back and forth. He blows 10-point leads in Super Bowls like it's week 3 of the NFL preseason. He did that in the fourth quarter against Kansas City a couple years ago. I mean, this year he let that one slip away again. I don't know if he can make those adjustments he needs to win. So I'm going to go Bears just because, the Lions, I think they just take the next step up. And to me, the Eagles are a team. Listen, Sirianni got new assistants now, right? New OC, no DC. They fell apart down the road last year, second half of the season. Well, now it's on you. So you're going to be out of here. I still don't know what kind of guy Hurts is. Is he as good as he was his first year? Is he as bad as last year? Talent-wise, they're great. But I think the Lions are the best team in the NFC. That'll be my take on that. And the Bears, no way, 7 wins. So I got Tennessee. I took them week 1 plus 4.5. No, the Bears. This is a rookie quarterback. You're telling me he's going to go and beat the Texans in week 2? No, thank you. Take the Texans minus 3.5 week 2. Then you have the Colts, who, the Colts could very well make the playoffs and win their division. I know there's all the Texan love. Colts are not a bad team. They're not a bad team. The Rams at home. Are they beating the Rams at home? McVay's a better coach than Eberflus. I don't care about all the talent on it. If the Rams are healthy, the Rams are going to beat that game because they got a better coach. It's that simple. Carolina, that's a win. Jacksonville people. Last year, here's an update, folks. Last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars were the Bears. Like everybody, Jacksonville is going to be really good this year, right? They were the flavor of the month. How'd that work out for them? Now it's some easy win in September. It's not like there'll be a foot of snow on the ground here. No way, Bears. They got a trip to Washington, Arizona, back-to-back off a bye week on the road. Maybe they split. And then they have the second half is 2 Detroit, 2 Green Bay, 2 Minnesota. You're not beating Detroit or Green Bay. No way. And maybe it's split against Minnesota. And then they have Seattle at home. I was ready for the Bears talk. I've been bashing the Bears since June. I'm ready to go on the Bears. Give me my Bears under.
I wish you'd have told me that before the show.
Yeah, that's all. That's like it's not even written down. I've just been talking about it for so long. The Bears, because the love of Caleb Williams. The guy failed at USC. Come on. I don't care about the players around you. You got a bad head coach.
Well, I'll give you something, Sean, that's going to make you feel really good. And in fact, we do what we call an incredible stat of the week every week in our newsletter, in our Playbook newsletter. Our next Playbook newsletter is going to be for the first week of the National Football League. We just did the all college edition. It came out yesterday.
Yep, there it is.
Yes, there you go, Victor. But the next one is going to be for the National Football League. And our incredible stat of the week, I'm going to just make everybody on the Gamblers World podcast here privy to what that incredible stat is going to be. You can take advantage of it early on in the season. But what you basically do is you fade any quarterback in the first week of the National Football League who was the number 1 overall pick in the draft as a favorite. That's exactly what Caleb Williams is this week, or will be this week. How about 2-21 to the spread? Those quarterbacks are
2-21. My pen is out.
There you go. Your pen, your pen or your pecker? What was that?
Whoa, no pen. I'm not Chip. I got my pants on. I got shorts on here. I'm dressed. 2-21, number 1 draft picks, number 1 QBs,
number 1 overall. Yes.
ATS.
Guys, why we got to make it?
Is that straight up or ATS?
That's ATS.
That's ATS against the spread. You mentioned win totals, guys. Let me throw one more out there. I played my Minnesota under their win total. I played New England under their win total as well. But I'm thinking the under that I like the most is a team that got very, very lucky last year. And that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were 10-7 in that division, yet they allowed 20 more points per game Then they scored. That's a lot more indicative of a 7-10 team, maybe even an 8-9 team. So for me, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know, I get it. We've researched it. You don't fade Mike Tomlin in the regular season. We all know the numbers. We all know the history. But again, remember that team from last year. They only got so lucky because, Joe Burrow both suffered a season-ending injury. Deshaun Watson suffered a season-ending injury, basically opening up the French doors for the Steelers to win 10 games last season. I don't think they're going to be as lucky. Remember, luck tends to go the reverse way the following season, and I think that the league's toughest schedule will finally keep the black and gold under 500. I know that's not usually the case with the Mike Tomlin team, but I did play the Steelers under 8.5.
That's a great observation, Victor, because they did win really rather phony. That return to the norm stuff we were talking about and reversing itself. It also holds true for teams who ended up the season statistically plus or minus in the turnovers in the National Football League. And there's a huge, huge swing the next year. That being said, the team in the National Football League last year who was minus the most in net turnovers was the Washington Commanders. And if you take a look at the record of those teams that were worst in turnovers the very following year, it's jaw-dropping how much they improve. Now they've got a new quarterback, a new coach. They're not going to be the Washington Commanders that we saw last year, that bumbling, stumbling group that Sam Howell put all those numbers up for Washington to lead the league in negative turnovers. Then on the flip side, you can look at teams that were positive in turnovers and how they come back to the pack. And you can also, in that same case, fade the San Francisco 49ers. So 2 other food for thought observations here on the show this week.
Nola faces player season props. I don't really jump into a lot of season player props, but if I do look at anything, I'm an undertaker. More often than not, a guy's going to get hurt and not make those numbers. I think I saw something on Twitter. If you blindly took a bunch of like wide receiver under props or something, you'd be hitting like 60% of your bets. Like it was something ridiculous. Like if you just blindly go unders on these things, because again, how many guys get hurt? Someone else has a breakout year. They're unders. Play the unders. I know people love over, right? That's the mentality of people anyway, their thought process. Game overs, but I'm an under guy. I don't know if you guys do a lot of player props. And I don't have any bet this year anyway. So,
Sean, I love your term, what you just threw out there. I haven't equated it that way, but when you said you were an undertaker, it's wow. There's a word for that in our business, the undertaker. You know?
Yes. Especially on a prop. Guys get hurt. It's like you're cheering for something to be perfect all the time. It doesn't happen. Things happen. All it takes is like that 2 bad games, and all of a sudden you're done. Stop Geo. I can't. My clicker's not working. There we go. Higgs is saying hello. Stop Geo says, how many years in a row is the AL East, the NFC East not have somebody win 2 in a row? Yeah,
20.
It never happens.
It'll be 20 this year.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, I think the Eagles should win that division. I think Dallas has problems. They got offensive line problems. They got a running back who's in as good a shape as I am. Quarterback running for his life, looking for $60 million.
Right. And anything less than 150 is a good bet in there. Very good bet. And I see that he got it at minus 120. Very nice.
Yeah. And that's probably late because they were probably supposed to 110 in June or July. So, but could the Chargers be sleepers in the AFC? I say no. I mean, is there a guy who's the only guy in our team who's caught a touchdown pass? Like everybody's gone.
Right.
Right. I mean, really. Right. Eckler's gone. I'm pretty sure. Right.
Right. Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett. Yeah, they've lost their whole receiving team.
Who's caught a pass from Herbert?
Well, read between the lines there, Sean. All the wide receivers are gone. Herbert's ailing. He's hurting. You got Jim Harbaugh as their head coach who just loves to run the football and chew up the clock. Do you think you're going to see a few Charger under totals this year? You watch and see.
I was going to say, you bring all that up, I'm thinking maybe Chargers to win the AFC West now with all that coming in. And nobody will see him come. They come to win the West.
You know, it's no surprise that he's well, I'm not going to say steal. It's
under 9.5.
It's no surprise that Harbaugh went to his brother's team to load up on 2 running backs. I'm talking about J.K. Dobbins in the offseason and Gus Edwards in the offseason, who were basically number 1 and number 2 running backs for Baltimore, his brother's team. You think they're going to run the ball 30, 35, 40 times a game in L.A. this year? I think so. Low scoring, good running backs. In fact, I made sure that I loaded up on both of those running backs in multiple fantasy football drafts this season.
I was going to say, I thought maybe they took I'm shocked they didn't take the running back from Michigan too, but
right. Blake Corum ended up going their crosstown rivals, the Rams.
Yeah.
But the Chargers are also very, very pleased with the youngster Kamani Vidal, who I believe they drafted in the 6th or 7th round. He could end up being the best running back of the bunch on that team.
Maybe he'll turn into like Sproles for them.
Right.
Like Pakua last year.
Yeah, cool. Out of nowhere, that guy.
Exactly.
Colts to win the South plus 350. I don't hate this, right? Because the love is on C.J. Stroud.
I'm in.
Right? I mean, I'm not going to do a favorite. I won't give out a favorite as the thing. I'm going to go either here or Jag. And I like these guys better than the Jags. So
awesome.
Caleb Williams, not a love for Caleb as well. Jesse Shule. My guy. Anybody know Jesse? I don't know who could count. Steelers have only 2 other coaches of the franchise, but time to move on from Tomlin. What do you think? Time to move on?
I think Mike Tomlin's going to choose what time he's going to walk through that exit door. But for sure, when Pittsburgh does not have a winning record at the end of the season this year, the chant's going to get real loud and real long for that to be this time for Mike Tomlin. So it's not like he's a gray beard and he's really all that long in the tooth.
Because he got the job at 32 or something? I mean,
That's right. He got it young. Exactly right. Exactly right.
But also, not as long as he always produces one of the NFL's best defenses. And that is the case.
They're always good.
Well, one thing you got to say, though,
this
is not the early 2000s. This is the NFL 2024. And scoring 17 points a game on offense is not going to get you very far. No. And that's what the Steelers have done on offense last year.
But the Steelers, though, it's such a franchise. They just get guys. Like, the defense is always solid. Now, they've had offensive woes the last couple of years. It's not like they haven't drafted decent players. Like, you think you get a wide receiver, like Pickens or whatever. It's just a team. It's not – what's the word I'm looking for? For a long run of mediocrity, it's not there. Like, if he leaves after this year, say they have a losing record this year. Say they somehow pull out a 10-8 record and win. If he leaves, I don't think that team goes into the toilet. I'd be shocked if it would be, even though it'd be a whole new regime coming in. It's just kind of set. It's kind of like the Cardinals. Like St. Louis Cardinals, they're always going to somehow field the same kind of team all the time, right? Like, it's just a franchise that drafts the same. It's won consistently. Hasn't won a Super Bowl in a while, but it's a winning. I don't know what they do over there. And I hate the Steelers. I can't stand the Steelers. But they just somehow, they're always there. It's bizarre. Vegas has to beat their taking unders. Yes, take the unders. Timothy comes in. Timothy's a sign guy. He just comes in, says hello, gives a little wave. Jesse, I know about the Undertaker. Sean could be King Kong Bundy, and Victor could be Bam Bam Bigelow. That's it. He's got the beard for it. He's got the little goatee there. And who'd Mark be? Mark would be like Mean Gene. No, not Mean Gene Oakland. Who is the manager? Give me a wrestling manager. Do you even know who these guys are, Mark? Mark probably was like, who the heck is King Kong Bundy and Bam Bam Bigelow?
I can go way back as far as wrestling.
Wrestling, all right. I didn't know if you know.
Yes. But I do not know the answer to your question though.
Yeah, I forgot his name. He had like dark hair and glasses. They had the crazy 80 guys were fabulous. Yeah, Victor just needs like a big flaming tattoo on his head.
There you go.
That would be fabulous. But I don't think you're as big as Bam Bam, so I don't know if that should be insulting or funny. It's partially right. King D agrees with me.
To Fritz Von Erich and Bobo Brazil. That's how far back I go as far as when it comes to wrestling.
Right,
and
we're talking 1970s.
You probably don't even recognize.
Yeah. Well, I knew the other Von Erichs, the Sons.
The Sons, right? Yeah.
Jimmy Hart. Here we go. It was Jimmy Hart. Yes. Brian the Brain Heenan. Definitely not Captain Lou. We got to get Timothy coming. Yeah, get him a Captain Lou. We can put some rubber bands in the goatee.
We got a bunch of closet wrestling fans here on the show.
Yeah, listen. It can go off the rails a little late when we go into. Sometimes we'll dive into some a food take. We go into food or some 80s stuff. That
Or
just means
underwear, right? Yeah.
yes, underwear. People not wearing underwear.
Victor, you recall Jack Reynolds, who used to co-host our podcast all the time in our
Absolutely.
television
The
shows.
voice of wrestling in Northeastern Ohio.
He was the first voice for the WWE. He was the first guy, the first announcer for wrestling, and he knew the whole regime there. He knew everybody there. He knew how many people, how many steroids everybody was taking back in the day.
They didn't do steroids. What are you talking about?
No, they didn't. Okay.
Yeah, Jack used to be the moderator of our very, very early Marc Lawrence podcast back in the early 2000s, right, Mark?
Yeah, and he co-hosted me on our television show we did for about 10 years, and Jack would also co-host on that as well. And a really, really great guy and a wonderful voice. He was a broadcaster in the Cleveland radio network stations there for 40 years. Just a great person, but we had that common bond when it came to talking wrestling, because he was the guy who introduced all the wrestlers.
Right. His son is still a big sports guy on the radio in Cleveland, right?
Tony Rizzo, exactly.
Tony,
Really popular.
Tony Rizzo. Okay, I know that name. Yep. Oh my goodness, 80s wrestling. All right, enough of that. That's just time to wrap it up here. That's all that means.
Yeah, when we go knee deep into wrestling, we're getting there.
Yeah. So listen, next Friday's show, we could talk wrestling. We'll start the show off only 80s wrestling, not new stuff, not the new trash. No, we got to go.
Right.
Big John Studd, Junkyard Dog, Tito Santana stuff. That's it. We can only do that kind of stuff. When wrestling was involved in like Cyndi Lauper videos and stuff like that, we can only do good wheelhouse wrestling in my era. All right, for the show, 3 picks today. I like the Giants minus 145. Victor likes the over 37.5 Miami and Tampa Bay. Mark, big dogs, hold your nose, put tape over the name, whatever you got to do to get to the Vegas Raiders at +9 here. 3 picks for you. Hit the like button on the way out. Early bird specials are up for NFL. I'm sure these gentlemen have something up for tonight or tomorrow's NFL or Sunday's NFL and baseball. We didn't even talk baseball. That's fine. It's slowly, the lines are getting out of hand anyway. So you see that during the week with me, Chip, and Doug talking about those games. But for Mark, thank you. First appearance. I loved it. We'll be back next Friday with Victor and Mark here, 1 p.m. Eastern as always. Have a great Friday. Thank you, gentlemen, and good luck to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.